Jamie Foxx. There are stories in Hollywood that shimmer with the glow of red carpets, the flash of cameras, and the thunder of applause. But then there are stories that run deeper. Stories that echo in the quiet spaces between the spotlights. Stories that remind us that even the brightest stars are shaped by shadows. Jamie Foxx's life is one such story. A journey that began in silence, was forged in pain, and has been defined by a resilience that defies belief. Today, as the world looks at Jamie Foxx at 57, it's easy to see the legend, the Oscar winner, the Grammy-winning musician, the comedian who could make the world laugh until it cried. But behind the accolades and the laughter lies a tragedy so profound, so quietly devastating, that it's almost impossible to comprehend. This is not just the story of a man who conquered Hollywood. It's the story of a boy who survived abandonment, a father who fought to break the cycle of loss, and a survivor who stared down death itself and still found the strength to rise. Jamie Foxx was born Eric Marlon Bishop on December 13, 1967, in the small, working-class town of Terrell, Texas. His earliest memories are not of comfort or security, but of absence. A mother and father who vanished from his life before he could even speak their names. At just 7 months old, he was left in the care of his grandmother, Estelle Marie Talley, a woman whose faith was as unyielding as her discipline. In the modest Talley household, there was no luxury, no indulgence, only the steady rhythm of hard work, church hymns, and the relentless expectation that Jamie would rise above his circumstances. Estelle was both anchor and storm, her love expressed in the form of structure and sacrifice. She was a nursery school teacher who believed that discipline was the only way to survive a world that offered little mercy to a black boy in rural Texas. For Jamie, music became both a refuge and a lifeline. While other children played outside, he sat at the piano, his small hands aching as they stumbled through Bach and Beethoven. The keys were his prison and his salvation, a place where he could pour the loneliness and longing that filled the empty spaces left by his parents. Birthdays passed without a mother's embrace. School performances ended with no father in the audience. Football games that should have been moments of pride closed with an empty seat in the stands. The boy who would one day make millions laugh learned early that humor was his armor, a way to hide the ache of being unseen. Yet, even as he excelled, the wounds of absence ran deep. Jamie's grandmother gave him everything she could: discipline, faith, music. But she could not fill the void left by the parents who had turned away. He once said, "I told jokes so people wouldn't see the loneliness. Humor was my shield." Behind every punchline was a child learning to survive in a fractured world. By the late 1970s, as Jamie entered his teenage years, America was changing. The civil rights movement had reshaped the nation, but in Terrell, opportunities for a young black boy remained narrow. Estelle made sure he was clothed, fed, and educated, but he lived with a different kind of poverty. The poverty of parental love, the absence of the most basic human bond. Still, out of that silence, something extraordinary grew. The church gospel gave him soul. The piano taught him precision. The strict hand of his grandmother carved resilience into his bones, and the laughter he used as a shield became the very gift that would open doors on stages far beyond Texas. Looking back, his childhood reads like a paradox, stripped of the love most take for granted, yet given the very tools that would one day make him unstoppable. The absence of parents left scars, but it also forced him to grow roots in the only soil he had: faith, discipline, and music. Out of that fractured beginning, Jamie Foxx emerged not as a boy broken by loss, but as a man forged by it, carrying within him both the silence of his wounds and the fire of his triumphs. the world would come to know Jamie Foxx as a force of nature, a man whose talent seemed limitless, whose energy could electrify any room. But before the world ever saw the star, Jamie was just a teenager in Terrell, Texas, wrestling with dreams too big for his small town and a hunger that could not be satisfied by applause alone. In high school, he was a standout athlete, a gifted student, and a musical prodigy, but even then he felt the weight of being different. He was the kid who could make the whole class laugh, the quarterback who could lead his team to victory, and the pianist who could bring a church congregation to tears. Yet, beneath the surface, he was still the boy searching for a place to belong, still haunted by the silence of parents who never came home. When Jamie left Terrell for college, he carried with him the lessons of discipline and faith, but also the scars of abandonment. He attended United States International University in San Diego on a scholarship, immersing himself in classical music and composition. But inside, he yearned for something wilder. The raw electricity of a crowd, the freedom to turn pain into performance. That hunger led him to the smoky comedy clubs of Los Angeles, where the spotlight could be as cruel as it was redemptive. Comedy was not a gentle art. It was war. Unknown performers stood in line for hours, praying to be called, only to be torn apart by impatient audiences. In those clubs, women were often given the microphone first, leaving men waiting endlessly, sometimes never called at all. Out of necessity, Eric Marlon Bishop shed his given name and created a new one, Jamie Foxx. The name was sly, androgynous, impossible to pigeonhole. "I chose Jamie because it could be a man or a woman," he would later explain. "I needed every chance I could get." That decision was more than a trick. It was a rebirth, a mask through which he could wrestle with rejection and chase the dream that haunted him. Behind the bright lights, the grind was relentless. There were no mentors smoothing the path, no family connections opening doors. Jamie was alone, armed only with jokes forged from his pain and timing sharpened by desperation. Some nights the room erupted, laughter rolling like thunder. Other nights, silence fell like a guillotine, cutting into his confidence. When the jokes failed, Fox later admitted, "The silence felt like it could swallow me whole." He learned to fight back, to claw his way out of that silence with every ounce of wit and courage he possessed. Each rejection became a scar, each scar a lesson. The discipline instilled by his grandmother, "Sit up straight, practice until your hands ache, never give less than everything," became the backbone of his stagecraft. The boy who once played Beethoven in solitude was now performing symphonies of survival with punchlines. In those years, Jamie lived in a paradox, making strangers laugh while hiding his own loneliness, earning applause while battling the fear that he would never be seen as more than a comedian. They laughed with him, yes, but deep down he wondered if they ever truly saw him. By 1991, his persistence was rewarded. Jamie Foxx landed a spot on In Living Color, the groundbreaking sketch comedy show that launched the era's biggest names. His characters were outrageous, his timing razor-sharp, his energy undeniable. For the first time, millions were laughing with him, not just the drunks in dimly lit clubs. Success, however, brought a new kind of pain. Hollywood branded him a funny man, nothing more. He was boxed in by laughter, fighting to be recognized as a serious actor, an artist of depth. That struggle defined the 1990s. From 1996 to 2001, he headlined The Jamie Foxx Show, proving he could anchor a hit series with charisma and range. Yet beneath the comedy was a man burning to break free from the label that confined him. Every script, every performance, every stage became another battle in his war for respect. The scars of rejection were still fresh, but they fueled him. Looking back, His early career was never gilded, never easy. It was forged in the crucible of silence and survival, lit by the desperate flame of a man who refused to be ignored. By the dawn of the new millennium, Jamie Foxx had become a household name, but the world still saw him through a narrow lens. He was the comic relief, the guy with the quick wit and infectious laugh, the entertainer who could light up any stage. Yet, inside, Jamie was restless. He knew he was more than a punchline, more than a supporting act. The hunger that had driven him from Terrell to Los Angeles now pushed him to break free from the box that Hollywood had built around him. He wanted to be taken seriously, to show the world the depth of his talent and the breadth of his ambition. It was a risk, a leap into the unknown, but Jamie had never been afraid of the dark. He had lived in it for too long to let it define him. The turning point came in 2004, when Jamie Foxx took on the role of Ray Charles in the biographical film Ray. It was a performance that would change everything. Jamie didn't just play Ray Charles, he became him. He studied the musician's every move, learned to play piano blindfolded, and lost himself in the rhythms and heartbreaks of Ray's life. The result was a transformation so complete, so hauntingly real, that audiences forgot they were watching an actor. Critics raved, and the accolades poured in. Jamie won the Academy Award for Best Actor, the Golden Globe, the BAFTA, and the Screen Actors Guild Award. In a single year, he had gone from being typecast as a comedian to being hailed as one of the greatest actors of his generation. But triumph, as Jamie would learn, is never without its shadows. The Oscar was a crown, yes, but also a chain. In Hollywood, glory can be as cruel as obscurity, and every script that crossed his desk carried a suffocating question. Could he ever surpass Ray? He remembered sitting alone in his hotel room after the ceremony, the golden statue heavy in his hands, the echo of applause still ringing in his ears. Outside the window, Los Angeles glittered with lights, but inside the room was unbearably quiet. It felt like both a blessing and a burden. He would later confess. The world saw his smile on stage, but not the doubt that gnawed at him when the lights went out. And then came the fall. Stealth, marketed as a high-octane action blockbuster, carried a staggering budget of $135 million. But when the dust settled, it limped out of theaters with just $79 million worldwide, bleeding nearly $60 million in losses, and Jamie's face was on the poster. Overnight, the whispers began. Was his Oscar a fluke? Could the man who had soared as Ray Charles really anchor Hollywood blockbusters? Or had he already peaked? The sharpest sting was not the critic's words, but the echo of those doubts inside his own head. For an actor who had spent his life proving he was more than a comedian, the thought of being reduced to a punchline again was unbearable. It wasn't the first time, either. Just a few years earlier, Bait had cost $51 million to make, but crawled to only $15 million at the box office. A disaster so resounding that some executives questioned if Jamie Foxx could ever lead a film. The memory of that failure never truly left him. And when Stealth collapsed, it felt like history repeating itself. Hollywood, he realized, loved to crown you, and then wait for you to fall. After Ray, Jamie once admitted, "I felt like I was no longer allowed to fail. Every role had to be perfect." That pressure was suffocating, but it was also fuel. Still, Jamie refused to be defined by failure. He poured himself into projects that showcased his range, singing and commanding the screen in Dreamgirls, embodying vengeance and defiance in Django Unchained, radiating menace in Baby Driver, and offering quiet dignity in Just Mercy. His music continued to thrive as well, with a Grammy for Blame It, and a voice that helped turn Kanye West's Gold Digger into a global anthem. Each success was not a victory handed to him, but one wrestled back from doubt and fatigue. Yet, for all the triumphs and the glittering moments on stage, Jamie Foxx's greatest battles were always fought far from the cameras. Fame, he discovered, was a double-edged sword. The world cheered his victories, but it rarely saw the cost. The applause could fill an arena, but it could not fill the emptiness at home. Behind the scenes, Jamie's life was marked by a longing for something that no award could provide. A sense of belonging. A family that would not dissolve into silence. A love that would not fade away. The boy who had been abandoned by his parents grew into a man who feared repeating the same mistakes, who carried the scars of absence into every relationship, every attempt at building a home. In the early 1990s, before the world knew his name, Jamie found a rare kind of intimacy with Connie Klein, a woman untouched by the spotlight. Their romance was simple, almost tender, built on laughter in small rooms and late-night whispers about dreams. In 1994, their love gave Jamie his first daughter, Corinne. The moment he held her for the first time, he felt a promise ignite inside him. A vow that he would never abandon his child, not like he had been abandoned. "My daughter saved my life," he would later admit. "She gave me a reason to fight harder." But even the purest beginnings can be bruised by the weight of reality. As Jamie's career began to take shape, the bond with Connie grew fragile. The pressures of ambition pressed against the walls of their home, and what once seemed solid began to crack. There was no scandal, no betrayal, just the slow erosion of love under the strain of time and circumstance. For Jamie, the heartbreak was sharper than any critic's review. He had not been able to give Corinne the whole family she deserved. "I feared marriage," he confessed, "because I never wanted my kids to be scarred by its collapse." It was a confession heavy with regret, the voice of a man haunted by the shadows of his own childhood. Connie withdrew from the spotlight, raising Corinne largely out of view, but Jamie refused to vanish from his daughter's world. If he could not give her the unity of a home, he would give her the constancy of a father. He was there at birthdays, at school recitals, in the quiet moments that mattered most. And Corinne, in turn, became his anchor. Years later, when she walked the red carpet at his side, radiant and poised, her hand resting confidently in his, it was more than a public appearance. It was a silent testament to a bond forged not in perfection, but in persistence. But life, as Jamie would learn, rarely offers second chances without a price. In 2008, he welcomed his second daughter, Annalise, with Kristen Grannis. Once again, Jamie hoped for the family he had always craved, a simple home, a love untouched by the chaos of Hollywood. Kristen was not part of the industry, not chasing the spotlight. She offered a quiet refuge, the kind of ordinary love that felt extraordinary to a man who had lived too long in the glare of fame. For a time, he believed this love could endure. But Jamie carried a shadow that no fame could erase. The silence of parents who had left him as a boy. That silence had carved a fear so deep it followed him into every relationship. To him, marriage was not a promise of forever, but a looming threat of collapse. In trying to protect his children, he created another wound, the wound of a home that could never be whole. The cracks appeared quietly. A dinner where conversation froze, food growing cold between them. Nights when Jamie returned from sets to a silence heavier than any applause. Kristen's eyes, once filled with warmth, carried distance, while Jamie's heart recoiled under the weight of his own doubts. There were no scandals, no betrayal, just the slow unraveling of two people who could not bridge the gap between love and fear. And so, like before, another dream of a family dissolved. For the second time, Jamie watched a daughter grow up without the wholeness of a home. That truth cut deeper than any failure in Hollywood. Despite the heartbreaks and the fractured dreams of family, Jamie Foxx never let go of his role as a father. If he could not give his daughters the perfect home, he would give them the unwavering presence he had always longed for as a child. He became the father he never had, steadfast, loving, and determined to break the cycle of absence. Corinne and Annalise became the center of his universe, their laughter and achievements the true measure of his success. In public, he was the superstar, the man who could command a stage or a film set. In private, he was simply Dad, cheering from the sidelines, helping with homework, and sharing quiet moments at the piano. The world saw the legend, but his daughters saw the man, and in their eyes, Jamie found a kind of redemption that no trophy could offer. Yet, even as he built a life around his children, the search for lasting love continued to elude him. In 2013, Jamie's name became linked with actress Katie Holmes. Their relationship was shrouded in secrecy, a high-wire act played out in the shadows of Hollywood. For 6 years, they moved like whispers through the city. Private dinners, hidden getaways, stolen moments away from the relentless gaze of the press. When they finally appeared together at the Met Gala in 2019, it was as if the world had been waiting for proof that love, tested in darkness, could survive in the light. For one night, they were not rumor but reality, their smiles dazzling beneath the flash of 1,000 cameras. But even the brightest fire can consume itself. Just months after their public debut, Jamie and Katie's relationship ended. The reasons were as complex as the people involved: different lifestyles, the pressures of fame, the relentless scrutiny of the public eye. For Jamie, the breakup was more than a tabloid headline. It was the loss of a rare hope, the collapse of a dream he had carried since boyhood. The images lingered: Jamie and Katie, radiant at the Met Gala, their hands clasped in a promise of forever, and then, weeks later, walking alone, their faces marked by the exhaustion of love undone by reality. For those who believed in them, it was a reminder that even fairy tales can fracture under the weight of the world. The end of his relationship with Katie Holmes was not just another heartbreak for Jamie Foxx. It was a crucible, a public unmasking of his most private wound. The world saw not the star, but the man, his heart laid bare and breaking. And for Jamie, it was a lesson as old as his own childhood that love, no matter how bright, is always fragile. He buried the pain beneath humor and music, but those closest to him saw the truth in his eyes. The man who had conquered the Academy stage, who had worn the crown of Hollywood, had been brought to his knees by the silence of his own home. Still, Jamie refused to let heartbreak define him. He poured his energy into his work, his family, and his art. He became a champion for causes close to his heart, using his platform to advocate for Down syndrome awareness in honor of his beloved sister, Dewandra, and for cancer research after the loss of his close friend Keith Jefferson. Each act of giving was a way to transform pain into purpose, to ensure that the people he loved would never be forgotten. In the face of loss, Jamie found a way to keep moving forward, to keep creating, to keep loving, even when love itself seemed determined to slip through his fingers. But the greatest test of Jamie Foxx's life would come not from the heartbreaks of love or the sting of professional failure, but from the sudden, merciless hand of fate. In April 2023, while filming Back in Action in Atlanta, Jamie's world changed in an instant. One moment, he was laughing with his crew. The next, his body betrayed him. A brain hemorrhage struck without warning, dropping him to the ground and plunging his family and fans into a nightmare of uncertainty. The man who had seemed invincible, who had danced and sung and acted his way into the hearts of millions, was now fighting for his life behind hospital walls. For nearly 3 weeks, Jamie hovered between life and death, 20 days erased from his memory, as if stolen by the darkness itself. Outside the hospital, rumors swirled. Jamie Foxx is blind, Jamie Foxx is paralyzed, Jamie Foxx is gone. The world held its breath, scrolling through headlines, desperate for any sign of hope. Inside, the reality was even harsher. Jamie's family kept vigil at his bedside, his daughters clinging to his hand, his sister whispering prayers into the sterile air. Machines hummed and beeped, doctors moved with grim determination, and every hour felt like a lifetime. For Jamie, those lost days would remain a blank space, a void that no therapy could fill. "I went away for almost 3 weeks," he would later say. "I don't know what happened to me. I saw the tunnel, but I wasn't ready to go." When he finally emerged from the abyss, Jamie was not the same man. His body was weakened, his voice cracked and uncertain, his steps slow and deliberate. The simplest acts, standing, speaking, playing the piano, became battles against gravity and doubt. Yet, in the midst of this struggle, Jamie found a new kind of strength. The applause was gone, the spotlight dimmed, but in its place was something purer, the love of his family, the prayers of his friends, the stubborn will to survive. His first halting steps were victories, his first notes on the piano a resurrection. He wept, not from pain, but from the miracle that he could still create, that he was still himself, scarred but unbroken. In the months that followed, Jamie's recovery became a testament to the power of resilience. He returned to the public eye slowly, hosting Beat Shazam with his daughter Corinne, their laughter a living reminder that the legacy of Fox was not just in awards, but in blood and bond. He spoke openly about his ordeal, about the fear and the gratitude that now colored every day. "Every day I wake up is already a win," he said. And in those words was the wisdom of a man who had measured the worth of life not in wealth or applause, but in breath itself. But even as he reclaimed his life, shadows lingered. The stroke had left scars no doctor could repair, and the losses of recent years weighed heavily on his heart. In 2020, Jamie's beloved sister Dondra passed away at just 36, her absence a wound that would never fully heal. In 2023, as he fought his way back from the edge of death, he lost his closest friend, Keith Jefferson, to cancer. Each loss was a reminder that survival does not promise happiness, that even the strongest hearts can be broken again and again. Yet, through it all, Jamie Foxx has refused to surrender. He has turned pain into purpose, grief into action, and scars into stories that inspire millions. His philanthropy has deepened, his devotion to his daughters has only grown stronger, and his art, whether on stage, on screen, or at the piano, carries a new gravity, a new depth. At 57, Jamie Foxx stands as a living testament to the power of resilience, the courage to rise after every fall, and the grace to keep loving even when love itself seems fleeting. His story is not one of perfection, but of perseverance, not the absence of tragedy, but the triumph of spirit over every heartbreak. If Jamie Foxx has ever touched your life, through a performance, a song, or simply through the resilience of his journey, let your words join the chorus of gratitude that surrounds him. Because some legacies are not written in gold or stone, but in the hearts they continue to inspire. Jamie Foxx, scarred but unbroken, stands as proof that even in the face of unimaginable tragedy, the human spirit can rise again and again and shine.